3 points or 5 points.
Well, I was under the impression the mayor officiates this, so if council members, I will defer to you, and I'll follow your lead.
Well, I know in previous years, we've always elected like a president of the budget committee, but this year we didn't do that. So we've just been deferring to the mayor to run it.
Okay. I have no problem getting it started. I just don't want to offend anybody.
You won't. Why don't you go ahead?
Not offended.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. This is our third budget committee meeting involving the Middle Rogue Metropolitan Planning Organization, MRMPO, funds expenditures. As you know, we've had budget sessions in November. We had them again in January. And then that brings us to tonight for the remainder of the funds, and to also potentially deliberate some of the pending expenditures that were basically reserved until further information was gained. So, and I provided you with, basically, it's not a spreadsheet, but it's a breakdown of what we've done so far. And from what I can see, we have about $20,000 left. Now that is without including those funds that we've reserved, but the council wanted some further time to deliberate.
Do we want to do roll call and pledge in order to get started?
We can certainly do that.
Okay, so Mayor Studebaker, not sure if he can hear us, but we know he's here. No, Councilor Bishop's not here. Councilor Hinckley.
Here.
Councilor Rigney.
Here.
Councilor Palmer.
Here.
Councilor Wilson. And Councilor Gina.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, if everybody can join us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. It's your guys' pleasure. Would you like to discuss there's 1, 2, 3 items pending, 4 items actually, from the last budget session. One was technical assistance for an emergency plan. Evacuation materials was another item. The buckled sidewalks on 2nd Avenue, I've got answers for that. And then finally, the storm drain repair or potential repairs at Swedes. So I will answer any questions or provide any information that you may need.
We're supposed to have public input first.
We are. I'm not a mayor, Carol.
I'm just looking at the agenda. And then I see Joel here, and I just wonder if I don't know. I'm just asking.
You're absolutely correct.
Good point.
Joel, you're here to speak public comments, correct?
That's correct. Mayor, council members, committee members, city manager, thank you for having me here to speak. I wanted to bring to the budget committee a proposal for supporting a community garden. And this proposal is going to the Parks Committee on Wednesday this week, March 2nd. And depending on their recommendation, it might go to the city council later. I hope some of you have had a chance to see the proposal. I started this off based on some social media interest I saw in the community garden, the fact that the previous community gardens in this area are no longer operating. And in talking to the parks folks, it seemed like a good alignment with wildfire management goals in the park, as well as goals for getting more people, volunteers involved in the park. I won't go through the proposal in detail. It does talk about some areas near the water treatment plant. And I think, one of our goals would be to start small and make sure that there's really people interested in doing this and volunteers who are committed to maintaining our garden space, and to raising the funds needed to do that. So we wanted to start small with just enough to see that there's really a commitment there. I put together a proposed budget for this if the council approves use of the land. And I think depending on which area we end up using, we could put a pretty good start of a garden in place with fencing, 8-foot fencing, walk gates, raised beds, and water for around $6,000. It's a little more if it's one of the areas because it's a little further from the water. So my request to the budget committee is that they consider earmarking $1,500 or $2,000 as matching funds, only to be used if the city council approves the project. And if there's a group of volunteers that convince the city council that they're committed to maintaining the project and prove that they've done some fundraising to make it happen. So that's why I'm saying, just a little bit of money as matching funds to encourage volunteerism. The areas near are immediately adjacent to the bike path, near the baseball diamonds, near the powerhouse. And I have to admit, I think long term, if the garden really took off, it might also be something where we could have Saturday garden market along the bike path or something. So I see it as a real compliment to bringing people into the park and using the bike path, and getting more people involved in the park. So again, the request is to earmark $1,500 to $2,000 as matching funds to funds raised by a group of volunteers for a community garden.
Councilor Hinckley?
Joel, I would suggest that the upcoming fiscal budget for the upcoming fiscal year, those budget committee meetings will be starting here soon. We're going to be required to do them. Tonight is about the MMRPO funds. So I would suggest that you maybe put together and revisit this when we start to look at next year's fiscal budget, because right now everything for this year that isn't coming in grants is already earmarked.
Sure, I understand that, and I understood that there probably were no physical funds available, and that the MRMPO funds are primarily focused on transportation projects. So I was really a little unsure whether there was worth me taking your time tonight or not. And I guess I was encouraged to do that by others who thought there might be a possibility of using a little bit of the MRMPO money for this.
I'm not discouraging you one way or another. I'm actually encouraging you when we're looking at the broader fiscal budget, because you might fit in better under parks and other funds as opposed to transportation funds. And we might have a little more leeway to fit you in somewhere on that.
But all of the dollars are not allocated yet. We have 20K on the table, don't we? Tonight?
For transportation related costs.
We've gone through this how many times? We're replacing shelter roofs. this would follow under the rubric as well as redoing the hiking trail, the biking trail.
I would say that walking is more related to transportation and biking is more related to transportation than the growing of vegetables.
So you just don't like this idea.
I don't think that, I'm with Danielle. We're talking about garden here versus transportation. So I'm kind of lost right now in what we're talking about.
Well, look, I'm I'm not a huge advocate of this simply because I think we're reinventing the wheel. It's going to take a lot of work to get rid of those blackberries. But the fact that Joel and his team are floating the idea of matching funds, that sounds like a great way to leverage what we've got here. Many of these funds are a stretch to say they're related to transportation. Redoing sports park roofs, come on. So I think this is as close to the intention of what these funds are to go to as many of the other projects we're doing. Joel, let me ask you this. Do you guys have the group in place, and could you make this happen this growing season, or is this still 6 months off?
I believe it's possible to do it this growing season. I at this point have 7 people who have said they'd be interested in helping and are interested enough, excuse me, to at least give me their names, phone numbers, and email.
Yeah.
My personal intention would be to see if I can help them with the organizational issues as far as dealing, getting the city council's approval. And also I'd be willing to help with the construction of it. But, if we get down to the road this spring of the city council approving it, I'm going to say, all right, you guys, it's up to you now to finish organizing this, get the guidelines in place, go do some fundraising, decide who the head gardener is, and how you're going to manage assignments and stuff. Because, I'm in the same boat. If people don't want to step forward and do it, then I'll let this go. I'm not that attached to it. I'm just trying to help get some people involved. But I think it could be done this spring. If we, we'd want to have approvals and funding in place. And those have to happen somewhat sequentially in the next couple of months.
Growing season is here.
Yeah, we would want to be able to plant in May.
Mayor, did you want to take this meeting over? I started it because you were having technical difficulties.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine, Jerry. I couldn't get my sound to work on 2 different computers.
Yeah,
But
no problem.
yeah,
I'll turn it back over if you'd like.
I say you started it, you power it down the stretch.
All right. You catch it, you clean it, huh? Okay. Anybody else have comments for Joel? Any questions? Is there any further deliberation? Or do you guys want to defer this? What do you guys want to do?
Well, I think that we should accept Joel's proposal and take it under advisement because he's come here tonight and made a proposal, and that we can decide down the road if his proposal meets the requirements that we're operating our decisions by. And also that it seems like the Parks Commission and the council are going to have a big part to say in this. And so I just think we ought to accept thank him for coming and sharing and for putting this before us, and then we can move on and decide what we're going to do with the money.
Everybody else good with that?
I agree with Carol.
I agree.
Well, thank you all very much for letting me take some of your time.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, Joel.
All right. Again, if you guys would like to go over the reserved funds that we talked about at the last meeting, we can discuss those unless you guys have a different direction you want to take.
I would like to hear the additional information on those reserved funds so that we know exactly what we're looking at.
You got it. The emergency plan, and I wish Councilor Beachside was here, and I'll have a conversation with her later. I contacted the county emergency manager, Holly, and we had a good conversation, and she had some good suggestions. First off, I'm not sure if the council or the committee knows that we have an emergency operations plan in place. It was done in 2014. She recommended if it's something, the desire of the council and the budget committee, it can be updated for a lot less than a whole new plan being commissioned. But she did say that there really won't be a lot of changes because most of these plans are boilerplate, just the boilerplate language that they apply to each committee or each community. As far as what the county's doing, I think there was an impression these last few meetings that the county had money and they were doing a county-wide emergency operation plan. That's not necessarily the case. What they are doing is they've joined a software program called Zone Haven, and they're going to create zones throughout the county, and it'll affect Gold Hill as well. So for instance, if something's happening in Central Point, it could be Zone 7. They can let everybody else know, stay away from Zone 7, and everybody should know where the zones are at. Similarly, if let's say Gold Hill is divided into a couple zones, when it comes to evacuation, they might tell Zone 6, stay away from Zone 7 because that's where the problem is occurring. And that's one thing that Holly mentioned is the not the problem, but the challenge with designating specific evacuation routes. If you have a specific evacuation route, people program that evacuation route. They might even practice that evacuation route. Yet, if a disaster occurs, that evacuation route may lead them directly into that disaster. So with this the Zone Haven program, they can tell this zone to head towards a different zone and away from the problem. But that's the county funding that I think people are thinking is available to complete a countywide emergency operation plan. That's not the case. Jackson County is one of 2 or 3 counties in the state that are trying this out to let the state know whether or not it's a good program. They got the funding for this year, taking the risk that maybe next year the state won't fund it, but they wanted to give it a try. So they've got that going. The county's emergency operation plan will be updating, but the cities were not included as far as incorporated cities. It's unincorporated areas that'll be involved in that update to this county's emergency operation plan. And then the other information that she had is we are still part of the alert sending, where the sheriff's department, fire department, or the county can alert our residents as far as whether a disaster is occurring in our area and how to evacuate. And she did confirm what we talked about last time, is that if an emergency is occurring here in Gold Hill, the county is going to set up a command post here in Gold Hill, and they will basically be dictating where people go and how they get there. So it's up to the council in the budget committee whether or not you want to invest $15,000 for basically an emergency plan that's already been done, or an update, or if you want to wait, I see it, Councilor, just one second, or if you want to wait until this Zone Haven is completed, at least see what it does for us before we make the commitment. Councilor Hinckley?
So I was wondering whether or not we looked on the advice of the county, what it would cost to update that emergency plan, because it was done in 2014. The fire seasons have gotten steadily worse over the years, and what it might look like to see whether or not we can get maybe Ryan from RV Cog or somebody to look at it and see, does it need to be updated with all of the new disaster areas that are happening?
Right. I didn't ask her because I don't think she would have told me. That's a difficult number to commit to if you're not in the industry. I can certainly call around. But again, I think the only one I would call is the people who did it back in 2014, because anybody else, they don't know what we have. They'd probably charge me to look at what we have. It's just a slippery slope. If you want me to send it back to or refer back to whoever did it in 2014, I can certainly do that.
Yeah, I mean, if we could just, in my opinion, I mean, it's obviously up to consensus. How much would it cost to just have them give a look and see, does it need to be updated?
Okay.
Who did it in 2014?
You don't mind looking at my backside for 1 minute, I'll go get it. It's in the next room. In fact, hold on a second, if you guys don't mind.
Okay. No, I don't mind.
Prepared by Ecology and Environment Incorporated, Global Environmental Specialist. And just to give you an idea of what it looks like.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's got all these tabs. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's pretty extensive.
Well, one of the things that I would suggest is in the website revamp, when we're looking at putting documents up there, that's actually one of the plans that I wasn't able to get up there while I was doing it. I would encourage us to digitize that and put it on the website so that citizens actually have access to the emergency plan.
Yep. Actually, I think we have 7 of these, for 1 for me and 6 for counselors. I think that's the only reason I can think why we have 7 copies. And it was November of 2013, not 2014. So just want to be correct. Counselor?
Well, I'm with Councilor Hinckley. I think that we should digitize that and keep those copies at City Hall, that each one of the counselors gets a thumb drive or whatever, and then put it on the website, like Councilor Hinckley suggested.
Okay.
I would agree with Councillor Palmer. Releasing those plans from City Hall is never a good idea. It's how they get lost and then they're never found again.
Yeah. I was quite surprised we had as many copies. I'm guessing maybe the counselors never got them. That's the only thing I could think of. Okay, and you want me to contact them and ask them how much it would cost to update it?
I would make that suggestion just because so we're looking at almost 10 years old on that plan. Usually these plans are looked at least every 10 years. So I mean, just to see, does it need anything?
Yeah.
And Mr. Manager, I would also, I think we should also run it by RV Cog and see if they're willing to weigh in on it. I think their price is definitely going to be better. And at the end of the day, they know more about Rogue Valley planning than any entity. I don't know where this global outfit is based, but I'm guessing they're not in Medford.
I can look. And they'll probably refer me to Holly, since she's the emergency management manager. And not, because it's not a planning deal. Well, it is planning, but it's not land use.
Yeah, emergency planning.
Yeah. So they would probably refer me right back to her. I'm trying to find out where they're at.
I was going to suggest we see if Rogue Valley Council of Governments could help us also determine if they could do it locally, or I don't know, I don't know if the League of Oregon Cities is another entity that could help us. But that's somebody else that pops into my mind. And if they don't, then maybe they can tell us who can. And maybe at the same time, you can call the Ecology and Environment Incorporated and find out what they would charge us. And then we'd have information from more than one source to make our decision on.
So do we want to continue to leave those funds reserved?
Do we need to do a roll call to see if everybody agrees? Because there's only about 4 pictures up here, so I can't tell if anybody else is shaking their head or putting their thumb up or whatever. So I don't know. You know, I'm for reserving them still until we get more information.
Okay. Councilor Hinckley?
I say we continue to reserve. I'm loath to let funds go that have already been reserved, and only to find out that we shouldn't have let it go.
Okay, Councilor Palmer?
I'm going to side with Councilor Hinckley, just because I'm not sure what we're doing. And we've mentioned a lot of good resources, but I think if we went right to who's our county commissioner? That's Colleen, is it Roberts?
Yeah, Colleen Roberts.
Yes, I think if we went to her, she could lead us in the right direction. And it's free.
Free is good.
Carrie, I'm kind of doing your job. You want to take over on the roll calls?
Yeah, I was gonna try to say something, but I didn't want to interrupt. Okay,
Just
so
got it. I'm sorry.
Councilor Rigney, do you want to reserve?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Councilor Gino?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to reserve.
The non-council members also get a vote, so Mr. Warwick hasn't weighed in.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Warwick?
Yeah. Okay to reserve.
Okay.
And what about the mayor in a budget committee?
I would also support reserving, not spending it yet. See if we can get it done for free.
Okay.
Okay.
The last person, because I know we like to think of them as one entity, but Larry and Carol Holm are really just they're two members.
Okay. So, Mr. Holm?
Be wise here, Mr. Holm.
I can't hear what she just.
Oh, they're asking if you want to keep the 15,000 in reserve for the evacuation camp.
Sure.
Okay.
He hasn't been paying attention.
And so based on that conversation, I'm assuming, which I shouldn't probably do, that we also want to reserve the 2,500 for evacuation materials.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody that says no? Perfect.
Okay.
Repair buckled sidewalks on Second Avenue. We've talked about, we've heard this, we've heard that. ODOT says it's our responsibility. We say we want to see it in writing. Well, I finally have it in writing. And quite honestly, it's not really, it has nothing to do with the trees. Basically, we basically said that we agree to allow ODOT to handle curb to curb, and we handle anything outside curb to curb. Bottom line, no question, doesn't say anything about Gold Hill, you planted these trees, so now you own it. It has nothing to do in here about trees. That's the second page of the agreement. And then on the third page, I saw somewhere else where it says, we agree to take care of anything outside the curbs. So it is our responsibility. It has nothing to do with former council decisions. It sounds like a pretty standard agreement. And this is back in June of 2003. I've got another one from the 90s, but because I think 03 supersedes the 90s, then that's probably the one that's going to take priority. So, any comments on that?
Yeah,
I think we should repair the roads or the sidewalks.
yeah, and I guess the only question I had was, we talked about having city staff do that, but,
That estimate is for city staff doing.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I get, because my question is not to, yeah, I don't want to, how do I say this? Is it within their scope of expertise to do that kind of work? And is that something we want them to do, or would we want to seek a professional contractor to do that? I'm just asking that as a question, is all,
Mhm.
not as a directive.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know. No, I'm curious to know how much of the sidewalk we have to repair. Because when I walk in the morning, it seems like there's only a couple of places that are where it's really buckling. So I just was curious to know if how much of the sidewalk we're going to have to repair.
Yeah, that's a good question. I did check with staff before we provide, I asked them for the estimate. And Mark, to answer your question, they feel confident that it probably consists of lifting a slab up, because the concrete is in sections, lifting a section up, leveling beneath it, and setting a section back down. If that's not
okay.
correct, I don't, I'm not a cement guy.
So we're not talking about demoing out large sections of sidewalk and having to re-pour and all that.
No,
Yeah,
I don't want that. No, I don't want that.
right.
They say they can lift up a slab, clean out underneath it, and put the slab back down. I'm confident in that, but I don't want us to have to frame. And I mean, there's ADA issues. There's all kinds of stuff that I don't want us to inherit.
Sure. Okay.
Mr. Hinckley?
That's my chief concern, jumping on board with Mr. Warwick, is with having city staff do this, does that open us up to liability with ADA if they do it incorrectly? If it turns out that there needed to be something more structural and it causes an accident with what they do, are we now liable for potential injury?
Yeah, it's a great question. And quite honestly, we're liable right now. When we signed the agreement saying that we're responsible for everything outside the curves, we own any trip and fall that happens.
Right, but can
What
we
helps-
potentially mitigate that by having an actual contractor do the work as opposed to having Shannon and Tony do that work?
I don't know that answer. I know that any effort that you put towards fixing them, whether it's city staff or a hired contractor, does mitigate that liability because you're showing at least an attempt to fix it. I know that in one of the cities that I worked at, our city crews did it, and we did it again to demonstrate due diligence where, hey, we're working on it. If you guys want to provide more money, I'd love for city staff to work on other things that we have to do. I mean, we only have 2 of them. Right now it's fire season, and I want them working on that. There's only so many of us. I mean, they're going to have me out there with a helmet and a shovel. I know they are. So if we have more money for that.
He's really good at putting up Christmas lights, I know. So probably he could do cement too.
With his other leg.
We do have the additional $20,000 that is not yet allotted that we could potentially put towards having a contractor do it, especially if city staff is needed for fire mitigation.
Yeah, and I'm sure the next question is, do we have a quote? I don't have a quote, so we'd probably need to reserve that again, so I can have a contractor come out and walk the streets and identify those slabs that are lifted, and we can get an accurate, it could be 12,000 or 15,000, don't know. Carol?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Will we be replacing the trees that are probably going to be taken out when we repair the sidewalks?
I don't have an answer to that right now. I don't think that's been discussed. I think what would be nice is if we call someone in for a quote, we can ask that person if the tree has to be removed. And then I can come back to you and say, the quote is this much, and the contractor says the trees will be removed. And maybe that contractor will be familiar with a tree that has a deeper root that won't create the same problem. So we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I mean, I would be in favor of at least getting an estimate from somebody to look at all the sidewalks and see what the cost would be. And if it comes in line with a reasonable expectation of cost and can free up Tony and Shannon for other city duties, I'd say look at doing that.
Perfect. Counselor?
Jerry, along with the buckling sidewalks, I was thinking, so Mr. Lowe and I are on the Safe Routes to School Committee, and we've been looking into that. And the ODOT has a program where they will help us to pay for safe routes for our students to get to and from Hanby and Patrick. And I know part of what we were talking about was we would probably be too late for project funds this year, but we might be eligible for planning funds to have ODOT come out and look at that and decide whether or not they would be willing to give us funding. But with Safe Routes to School, we're required matching funding. So that might be something that you do, is to call Safe Routes to School and see if they might be willing to, maybe with the quote on the buckled sidewalks, see if they'd be willing to mitigate some of that cost. Because the kids are at risk with those buckled sidewalks walking down that way to and from Hanby and Patrick.
So get the quote for the sidewalks first, and then we reach out to the ODOT. Okay. And I'm pretty sure with Safe Routes to School, they take surveys on how many kids walk those sidewalks. So I'm sure they'd take that into consideration.
Yeah, I'm just saying we might be able to get double the money from Safe Routes to School. So.
Counselor Palmer?
Yeah, we might also want to call the Central Point School District, since these are their schools, and going hand in hand with Counselor Hinckley about their students. They might want to kick in and help out with that too, with funds.
Okay. So when you say their kids go to Central Point, is it the high school kids?
No, the Patrick and Hanby both fall under Central Point School District. Gold Hill doesn't have our own school district.
Got it. Okay. I didn't know that. Okay. Okay. So if I understand everybody right, we want to reserve those funds. You want us to get estimates for sidewalk repairs, ask the question, what trees have to be removed, reach out to, well, after the quotes, reach out to Safe Route to School in Central Point. So is there anybody opposed to that? So Carrie, I'm taking your job again. You didn't even know, did you?
I was going to say, should we do a vote count, or should we go down the list?
I think with the committee, I think as long as everybody's, the majority's in agreement, because there's no voting. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I'm just messing. Okay. The final issue is Swedes. We don't have an answer for that. We still haven't identified what the problem is. We haven't had enough rain to really watch where it's going. We have tried some dye to see, where the water's traveling. And quite honestly, Swedes hasn't had the problem yet again. So I don't know, maybe as being overprotective and scared of scared for our budget, and I saw this money thinking, let's save it and set it aside in case something catastrophic occurs. But we could have that money on the side for a long time. Like I said, back in October, November, I was trying to be prudent and trying to be proactive and, handle the problem, but we don't know what the problem is. So that's
But
my pitch on it.
is there still a problem?
Yeah,
Again, I don't know.
if it doesn't rain, there won't be.
Right, exactly. It hasn't rained enough. So
Right,
unfortunately, I'd really like it to rain real hard so I could see what's going on.
yeah.
Well, I can say that all this next week, the weather is predicted to do hard, heavy rain. So maybe after this week, we might have a better idea what's going on with Swedes.
All right. So can we hold on to that also just for a little bit longer?
So again, the issue at Swedes is during heavy rains, it's actually backing up a storm drain inside their facility.
Yes, yes. We have one of the city, that's the problem is the city storm line runs directly under Swedes. And they feel that well, we've already proven this incorrect, but they thought that storm line was causing flooding inside their facility where they'd have to shut down operations. Well, and that storm line starts on 4th Avenue. We've determined that's not the case. It's just too choked up. There's no way enough water can get through there to create that type of flooding. So now we're thinking it's coming from 2nd Avenue. And that's where the problem is we know where on 2nd Avenue it's coming from.
And whether it rains next week or next year, these problems are not going to go away. I think we'd be foolish to not address it while we have this, the wherewithal to do it. We've talked about it before. It put great stress on our budget. This is our chance to fix it.
Yeah, and no doubt there is an issue from 2nd Avenue to the river. I'm not aware of, I can't remember the street name, but the street name that runs from Swedes on 2nd Avenue to the river, we have serious issues. I can no longer call it a Swedes problem. It's a Gold Hill problem. So, I mean, the mayor is absolutely correct.
So could we get that, identify that line and get it TV inspected?
We can try. The last I heard, they couldn't even get video in there.
Okay, yeah, because I don't know how else you would try to,
Right.
narrow
Right, we
down
tried
a
to-
location that might be causing the problem.
Yeah, we can try and scope it again, Mark. We tried to scope from 4th going towards 2nd, and I thought that one of the guys had tried to scope this road going towards the river. But I think that's a perfect start to the solution is try and scope the existing lines, identify what needs to be repaired, and perhaps move this money instead of calling it Swedes, just call it storm drain repair.
And I
I
mean,
can-
you've made the argument to me how the storm drains are definitely transportation related and it's a part of our vital infrastructure. So I can't see
Absolutely.
letting that money go and we have the opportunity to fix whatever is wrong down there.
Yeah, if ever there was a true transportation issue, it's your storm drains. And I can guarantee you that if you say, yeah, go ahead and use that money to repair storm drains, we'll spend it. I mean, I know we have at least $50,000 worth of storm drain issues, at least.
Yeah.
Well, we could have more than that because we still have money unspent. So we could, we could add money to the pot if we still have money left over.
It's your guys' discretion.
Well, if you need me to make a proposal, I'll make a proposal that that money be approved to go to council for storm drain repair.
Does anybody object to that?
I agree with that.
Sure. Well, this does my heart good, really, because these storm drains make me nervous. I mean, they really do. Shannon and I have gone, he's shown me, he's gotten down in these things and shown me where, he's shown me some where the pipe goes maybe 6 feet and just stops, just hits. It just never was built any further than that. It's just, it scares me. So to be able to do this will be good. Okay, I think that's all the pending funds that we had. The only one that will transfer from pending to approved would be the storm drain repair if it's approved by council at our next meeting. And I think the only thing we have left, unless you guys see something different, is the remaining funds. Yes, Councilor Hinckley.
So with the remaining funds, I actually have a proposal that I would like to put forward to committee when we get a chance.
Okay, and also I do have one declaration. Carol and I have been corresponding over the weekend, and she noticed a $1,200 discrepancy in her numbers and my numbers. And I compared a couple of documents, and the document that I prepared for MRMPO includes a leaf back that was going to be placed in the dump trailer. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Because I have nothing in writing, but I wrote it down in my report to MRMPO. I know we want one so we can suck the leaves out of the storm drains, but I can't find anything where I submitted leaf back to you guys for approval. And so I can't in good conscience leave that on there, and that may open up an additional $1,200 unless you guys want to go ahead and recommend a leaf back. Counselor?
So let me check with Councilor Palmer, because Councilor Palmer was there when I remember this happening. Didn't we used to have a vac truck and then we sold the vac truck to buy a different truck?
Yes, but that truck, the vac truck itself was not usable.
Okay, so this will be a different kind of vac truck that would be usable?
Yes.
It's not a truck.
It's not a truck. There'd be an attachment that goes on the trailer.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just an apparatus that sits in the trailer and they can tow it around and back stuff out. Carol?
Yeah, I did go back and look at some of my notes, and in the first meeting, which was in November, is that what you said is when the first meeting was?
No, we had a meeting in October.
Okay,
That was a
Yeah.
study session in October, and then we had the budget committee meeting in November.
oh, okay,
And,
okay.
and approval in November.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I think my notes are from the October meeting.
Mhm.
And I wrote down leaf vac under all those things that are in the first set of items. And I put
Right.
$1,200 by it. And then I've never seen it again. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I've been painstakingly listening to the meetings on YouTube to try and hear
Hmm.
something, and I haven't heard anything yet, but I don't want to mislead anyone. If I can't find that you guys voted for it, then I can't put it in there.
Well, couldn't we go ahead and vote for it now, since it seems like I don't know. It seemed like it was all part of that, all those items
Right,
up there. They
right.
all are around the same situations or scenarios. So I would suggest that we approve the leaf vac and make it official.
Okay, I just couldn't in good conscience continue without, when Carol pointed it out, I couldn't leave it on there without bringing it up to you guys. So if everybody's okay with that, are there any oppositions to that?
if it's for storm drains, then no.
Perfect, okay.
We would, yeah, I'm fine with that too. Would we just take that out of the remaining funds? Take that out?
Honestly, yeah, in my numbers, Mark, it's already taken out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's really, it won't sting a bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then
Yeah.
go for it.
Okay. All right. Now, Counselor Hinckley, I guess, I mean, we should listen to your suggestions. I only had two other suggestions, the vehicle abatement and the security fencing and signs for the powerhouse. Hold on, Carol's got something.
I just wanted to say, before we go to the new stuff, could you give us an update on the library park, the gazebo roof and the vehicle gates?
Yes. The library park's not been done yet. It's just a matter of time. And we're just limited on resources. And right now our priority is the parks. So now the gazebos, we're hoping to start those next week. And the vehicle gates, we haven't addressed those yet. And it's just a matter of resources.
Do we have any estimate numbers? Are we coming in close to the numbers that we've got listed here?
As far as the cost,
Yes.
the gazebo, it's right on. He hasn't changed his costs. The vehicle gates, I haven't heard back. We haven't even approached it since the last meeting. And then the same with the lighting for Library Park.
Okay.
Yeah. There's only so many of us, there's only so much we can do. So
Yeah.
We're trying.
Not trying to grind you, just want to make sure that we're dealing with the most real numbers that we can.
Yeah, we're trying. Yep. Carol?
And then up above, in my communication with you, you've indicated that the storage structure hasn't been bought yet.
That's correct. Remember in those meetings, we talked about prices rising and we are simply outpriced right now.
Oh,
I
so
mean,
it's exorbitant.
It's what?
It's a lot. How much has it increased by?
It depends on what size we're looking at. We kept trying to downsize to afford something. Meanwhile, prices keep going up. If you guys need that information, I can get it for you. Tony will be glad to provide you with current numbers. You'll have to call them. You'll have to call the people, the vendor. I think he just got so scared because it almost doubled.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Counselor?
Most contractors right now in construction, their bids are only good for a week because of cost, because of material cost and everything's just going up. It's just unbelievable. So if we get a bid, that bid's only going to be good for a week, and then it's going to change.
Yeah. And that's what happened to us. I mean, we got the quote, maybe had to wait a week for the council meeting. And by the time we got approved, I mean, it was, and that might be another thing that we think about using these remaining funds for, is to apply them towards what it would cost to get that structure.
And I would put my vote behind that use. A storage shed to keep the stuff that we have, especially the new items. That just seems like the smart way to manage our assets so that they don't break down and they don't fall into disrepair and they don't get weathered prematurely.
Right. Okay. Councilor Hinckley?
So I don't know if we're ready to start talking about the remaining funds or not. Are we?
I think we've kind of transitioned to that. So,
Okay. So like I had mentioned earlier, Mr. Lowe and I are on the Safe Routes to School Committee. And we've been looking at that program and what it would take to get safer routes to Patrick and Hanby. One of Mr. Lowe's suggestions that he's actually going to be going to the Planning Commission with is a 4-way stop going up to Hanby on the Blind Hill that would require vehicles to stop right before that blind hill so that they're not coming and speeding through. It's one of the only intersections leading up to Hanby that does not have a 4-way stop to slow traffic down. So they get up to speed and they go over that hill and they don't see that there are kids that are walking in that roadway because there aren't any sidewalks. So he's going to be going to Planning Commission and requesting that Ryan look at what it would take to put in a four-way stop there and try to get approval. And so I was thinking that potentially we might reserve some funds for stop signs back there, if that is approved, to be able to put in the four-way stop to Hanby. And what that will also do with Safe Routes to School is show a history that Gold Hill has already tried to mitigate for safety for our own zones, which may put us to get approval on Second for Hanby to get maybe crosswalks and things there. But also with the crosswalks and wanting that safe route down Second, we're going to require matching funds. And so I would propose that we set aside maybe $5,000 to look towards matching study funds for Safe Routes to School from ODOT. And then that way we would have the 5,000 in our application right away to say, hey, we're going to put this up front. The nice thing with Safe Routes to School is that due to our community size, we actually qualify for a discount. So we don't have to match 50-50. We may be able to match 20% of the proposed funds, as opposed to 50% of the proposed funds, and then they'll cover the rest if we're approved. So I think $5,000 is a good amount to put to the side to study on crosswalks and things like that for Patrick.
So Counselor, is that 5,000, would that include the four-way stop as well as a demonstration of having the ability to match funds with Safe Routes to School? Or
I would
would
make the suggestion that $5,000 in combination with the four-way stop and proposed funds, especially if we reach out to Central Point School District to see if they would be willing to also kick in some funds for matching funds for Safe Routes to School. And I think that way the city is putting up something and maybe the school is putting up something in order to meet ODOT's matching requirements.
Okay. So again, I'm still not clear. 5,000 for matching funds and then an additional.
No, it would be
$1,000
5,000. It would be 5,000 for matching funds and the stop
Okay,
signs.
Gotcha. Okay. Just want to be clear.
I mean, I don't know how much signs cost, so maybe you could give me a better idea how much a stop sign actually costs.
You know, the cost of signs aren't much. It'd actually be the consultation with, and I think it's going to be our engineer, not Ryan, but nothing's for free. So it would just be figuring out what it would cost them to evaluate the intersection. So I'd put probably $700. I mean, stop signs are probably $100 a piece. Labor will be city, so it'll be in kind, and then leave the rest for what we'd have to pay for an engineer to. And it depends on how in depth, and I'll talk to the engineer about it, how in depth he wants to go. Because I remember talking to you about traffic warrants versus just throwing up a sign. So I'll talk to him about that and ask him about Oregon's philosophy on all that. So,
Jerry, whose streets are we talking about anyway? Are we talking about Second Avenue or up on 6th with Patrick?
Both.
Okay, with the four-way stop sign, we're not going to put one of them on Second.
No, that would be over by Hanby on 6th.
Okay, though those are our streets. We can do what we want with them without consultation.
yeah, and if that's the council's direction, that's fine. Like I said, I'm used to cities where they have to get a traffic warrant, they do a study to see if it's necessary. And they did that for enforcement purposes. If, you know, if someone ran a stop sign, the first thing the judge asks is, was there a traffic or is there a warrant for the stop sign? In other words, was there a need? Was there a study done?
And I mean, we could discuss this at the next council meeting as well, because that was kind of my response to Mr. Lowe on his suggestion. That is the only intersection on 6th that is not a four-way stop. And it's right before a hill. And it makes more sense to me that that would be like the one vital place we would have a four-way stop.
Yeah. So Councilor Wrigley, I'll confirm with the engineer that, you know, if we own it, we can sign it. And then I can have that ready for you, Councilor Hinckley. If you want to bring that up at the council meeting, I'll have that information ready for you. And then meanwhile, does the budget committee want to reserve $5,000 for matching funds for Safe Routes to School grant.
Can I ask who Ryan is?
Ryan's our contract city planner with RB Cog.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Ryan Nolan. Yeah.
You know, I'll just say what I think. I was looking today with all the pending money that we have. When I added it up, there's $82,500 that's still pending, and so at this point in time, my vote would be for not dedicating any more money until we have decided what we are, how we're going to spend the $82,500 that we've already dedicated, and then see where we are with the idea that it sounds to me like Safe Route School will be around maybe, and that we get down and decide if we want to give money to it.
Okay. Anyone else? So Carol, if I heard you right, we don't want to commit any more funds. We've got 82,000 locked up, reserved for stuff that may or may not happen. We have 20,000 remaining. That number could grow if one of these other factors change. So the only other thing, so the only things that are to be considered was Joel's proposal. It's still on the table, whether the committee wants to move that forward to this council for consideration. And then I'm assuming, and I'll take it to the council for approval, but I'm assuming everybody's okay with the leaf back since it doesn't affect what I said we had left over, because I already took the money out thinking that we had approved it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound correct to what you're saying?
Yeah. Wait, am I mute? No, I'm not. Okay. Yeah. Yes, that
You're
sounds
good.
pretty much like I know I said this at the last meeting. We have $80,000 in funds, and then you talk about storm drains, and then you talk about, someone mentioned last time about maybe paving some streets in Gold Hill. And we don't know exactly what our money is going to look like, because we have this money pending. And if it goes to where we want it to go, then okay, we have about $20,000 left. But if it doesn't, then we could have a lot more money left. And then we could, again, decide what our priorities are and where we should put our money. And maybe it's the Safe Routes to School, but maybe it's storm drains. So that I hesitate to say we want to dedicate funds when we have some issues that already could use more money. That and the storage structure, I think, are two things that we would maybe want to put some more money toward. But I'd like to wait and see where we are before we make a decision as to just how we're going to utilize the rest of our funds.
Anyone else?
My only concern with waiting on Safe Routes to School is that in order to get in for this year, like I said, I think we're too late to get an actual project started this year. But before you can get a project started with Safe Routes to School, you have to have studies done. And Safe Routes to School does do the studies. I believe end of March would be our deadline. If I'm not wrong on those dates, end of March would be our deadline to get in for the studies for this year. Otherwise, we would be waiting until next year's funding cycle.
Do we know if they have technical assistance grants to do the study?
The technical assistance, that is their grant to do the study. But again, it's required matching funds.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They just want to see that we're putting a little bit of skin into the game. But because we are considered an underprivileged community, we would only have to meet 20% of those matching funds.
Okay. If you don't mind, I don't mean to push your idea off. I think it's a good idea. Maybe we can take a look at the general fund. I think the stop signs, I think we can make happen using general funds. We replace enough stop signs to be able to just throw up two more. I just want to make sure it's okay. So I'll check with the engineer on that. And the match for Safe Routes to School, TA, technical assistance, let me look at that.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy.
Unless the budget committee wants to go ahead and commit funds, that's immediate.
So I just have a question regarding the stop signs and Daniela's idea for the four-way stop. So you say most of that can come out of general funds without coming out of any of this money?
If it's just, yeah, if it's just a couple stop signs and if we don't require a study, a warrant study at the intersection, it sounds like we don't. Then if it's just a couple stop signs, I think we can absorb it in our repair budget. And I'll know more after I speak with our engineer.
Yeah, I guess the reason this is rather, I don't know, it's late to bring this up, but because of the stop sign issue discussed, there are quite a few stop signs in town that are needing to be replaced in themselves. They're faded. In fact, I think I ran one up on Fifth the other day because I didn't see it. It was so faded. And in fact, I was talking to Tony about that. He said you guys have some, apparently you have some in stock you're going to pick up somewhere or something. And again, this is sort of off topic for what we're doing here, but is that something that we can look at down the road? I know you guys got a lot to do, but do an evaluation on all the stop signs in town and replace the ones that need to be replaced. I thought in my own situation, because again, I'm pretty sure I went right through this stop sign and I didn't realize it till I was coming back the other way. And the stop sign coming the other way was easy to read and visible. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, the one going the other direction was so faded, I honestly think I ran through the intersection. And I would hate to have somebody not see a stop sign, accidentally run through an intersection and have an accident.
Right. No, and actually, since I've been here, they've been working on replacing the stop signs, but they kind of just work it into the schedule. So that's something, yeah, we can work off topic on that.
Okay, sure.
Mark, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll check with staff tomorrow and see where we're at with that and how much we actually have to do just to make it happen.
So really quick, just so everybody knows before I forget, I looked up the exact date, March 18th, 2022. Applications are due for anything that we do decide to do or not do for Safe Routes to School.
Sinister.
Okay, so I defer to the committee. What do you guys want to do with that?
I proposed it, so obviously I'm in favor.
There's a proposal, Counselor?
Yeah, I said I proposed the 5,000 for Safe Routes to School. So I approve that. I don't believe Carol does. So perhaps doing a roll call would make the decision one way or the other.
Yep. Understood. Carrie?
Okay. Counselor Palmer,
Yes.
Counselor Rigney,
No,
Counselor Hinckley.
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Gina.
No.
Okay, we did not pass it. It's 50-50.
Oh, hold on. We got,
I'm sorry, Mr. Holm.
Do you want to give $5,000 or not? You have to say yes or no.
God, how do I keep missing these? I get up twice and I missed them too.
Because for Safe Routes to School, do you want to give $5,000?
For the stop signs?
No, well, that's part of it, but also the other stuff that Danielle was talking about.
Yeah.
I second, he said yes. And I
Okay.
say no.
Okay.
What's new?
Yeah.
That's the way we operate.
Mr. Warwick.
And we got Mark.
I'll say yes.
Okay, so
Does Brad get to vote?
He's the tiebreaker.
right now we have 4 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay. So, and again, this goes to the council for approval.
I thought I heard 3 no's. I'm sorry.
You just muted yourself.
No, I didn't.
We have Brigney as no, we have Gina as no. We have Palmer is yes. Hinckley is yes. Mr. Holm is yes. And Mr. Warwick is yes.
And
But
Carol,
Miss
Mrs.
Holm.
Holm was no.
And Mrs. Holm is no.
4-3.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, 4-3. I can't count all of a sudden.
You're muted.
Did Brad
There.
vote? Sorry.
I did
He's a-
not vote.
Thank you.
Do I get a vote?
It's not a tiebreaker.
Only on a tiebreaker, Mayor.
I'm confused then because he got to vote on other things tonight because this is a budget meeting. So I'm confused, but if, I just need clarification.
Yeah, I have to agree with Carol right here. There's no reason Brad can't vote on this.
Okay. I don't know, guys. I never dealt with a budget committee, and having a mayor that does vote in council meetings, but participates in the budget committee, and I did include him earlier. I don't know.
What's your
I
two
bet
cents,
you if I
Brad?
look in the bylaws, it won't say.
My 2 cents is I would tend to agree with Carol. We've got a lot of money tied up with really very poor clarity how much we're going to end up with. So I would say, let's hold off until we have a clear idea. No.
And that creates a tie.
That creates a tie.
Okay. So now we'll do it the tie. I apologize for not knowing. I haven't had this.
It doesn't, at this point in time, it's got to be brought before the committee. And that's where the vote counts. Okay. This is just a
The council?
suggestion that
Okay.
on
So
where,
it
on where
goes
the
before the council.
budget committee stands. This is how the budget committee voted. Now it's going to go to the committee, the actual councilors.
The council. Okay. Thank you. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there anybody not okay?
Well, a 4-4 tie indicates that it would not be advanced.
I'm sorry?
Didn't we just come up with a 4-4 tie? We voted on whether to advance it to the council.
Right. But since we don't have a tiebreaker, it'll go to the council and let the council decide.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Got it. So the only thing that goes to council is safe routes to school. Is Joel's proposal off the table? Joel's proposal is 1,500 to 2,000. Carrie, let's just do a roll call.
Okay. So Joe's proposal. Mr. Rigney.
It's this one.
The community
Okay.
garden.
Counselor Palmer.
Yes.
Counselor Hinckley.
What are you doing?
Not these funds, no.
Counselor Gino.
No.
Mr. Holm.
Mr. Holm.
Yes, Carol.
Okay.
Jesus Christ. Yes, mommy.
Somebody call me?
Yes.
Mrs. Holm.
No.
This does not surprise me.
And Mr. Warwick.
I agree with Daniela in respect to the funds here. I have to say no.
And Mayor Studebaker.
Yes.
And we have a 4-4 tie again.
That's fine. Okay, so Joel, I'll get you on the agenda. I'll figure out how to do it. As far as how it's going to be either a discussion or an action item. And I know that the Parks Committee has a lot to do with it as well. So we'll talk, if you don't mind, let's talk tomorrow. Unless you have any other questions for tonight for the group. Okay. Have we covered everything? Is everybody satisfied with what we've gotten done tonight?
I got a question. What is
Sure.
the vehicle abatement for 10K?
I covered this earlier. We're having a lot of complaints about primarily RVs parked illegally within the city, and an issue with tow services not wanting to take them without charging the city. The reason being is tow service makes their money when the person comes back to get their RV or when they lien sell it. A lot of these RVs aren't worth a dime, so the tow service gets stuck with it. So they want to charge the city $1,200 an RV. We can tag them, but we have no teeth. And some of them move after we tag them, some of them don't. Some of them just thumb their nose at us. So we need, and I don't have money in the budget to pay a tow service for every RV that we need to tow. So that's what that is, Mayor.
Thanks.
Are we not still voting on those, Jerry? Because I thought that those were two suggestions that we were going to vote to put forward or not.
That's correct. I was just answering the question. That's what I understood also, Counselor. So I thought the understanding was we weren't going to consider anything else until kind of get further clarification on what's pending.
Do we have any legal avenue to require somebody that's got a RV parked in the street to move it without having to city to have it towed away?
No. And I'll tell you why. Technically, we should, Mark. We should be able to call the local law enforcement. But even when they were contracted with us, they wouldn't touch them. So then it reverted back to our ordinance. Well, and that's the reason being is because it's in our ordinance. And so because it's an ordinance, it's more administrative. So we could tag the vehicle, wait 72 hours and then tow it, but law enforcement won't.
Okay, yeah. It's kind of it's a no-win.
Yeah, my guess is, Mark, even if law enforcement did tow it, the tow company would probably charge the city of Gold Hill.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine.
So I just want to start cleaning things up, and it's hard to do it if we don't have the money to do it. But we can, Counselor?
I would like to visit the security fencing and signs for the powerhouse, because while we're talking about stop signs, well, I think there's some discussion to be had about whether or not we should fence around the powerhouse. I don't see why we couldn't take $1,000 of this money or something in the sign budget and at very least put up signs at the powerhouse. That place is a safety hazard and a risk. And I think that we should at the very least be putting up danger, warning, keep out signs.
Well, yeah, I'm without going into the liability because I don't want to expose us in a public meeting. It's a concern. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't a concern. And let's just put it this way. If every one of you guys can see that it's a concern, everybody in the public can see that it's a concern. It's a difficult conversation to have in a public meeting, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I was just down there today and I hadn't been down there in a number of months, and I was shocked at the amount of tagging on the building. And even in the canal, the old canal that fed the powerhouse, it's unbelievable what basically the vandalism in that regard that's been done down there. And a fence in my mind isn't going to keep anybody out. I don't know what the answer is to that place, because they'll just cut through the fence, which they've done that in the past. So
Understood, but the point is to show due diligence, show that the city made an effort. So if something bad happens, we can say, we tried and tried and we tried. That's
Yeah.
the key right there, Mark.
Yeah,
And-
I agree. That makes sense. At least if there was some signage.
And that's where I'm wondering with the signage, if we could just put danger signs up at the very least to let people know that that is not a safe place to be.
Yeah, I mean, the signs are okay, but if there's huge gaps in the fence or if there's no fence at all, I guess probably an off record conversation. I just think that's what we need. I'll find the money somewhere else somehow. I won't pay the guys for 2 weeks or something. We got to address it. So at the end of the fiscal year, we might see a deficit, but I've got to fix it. So we can put this on hold. And yeah, I think that's it. Unless anybody else has anything else. So what I've got is Safe Routes to School and the public garden proposal going to council next week for consideration. Does anybody have anything else?
Actually,
Procedurally,
no,
if I missed anything.
I'm going to force the issue. I'm going to make the proposal that the security fencing and signs for Powerhouse go forth to the council as far as budgeting, and I would request that we do a roll call on that. That's dangerous, and I think that we have the funds allotted for it, or at the very least, we have available funds that could be allotted for it, and I think that it would be irresponsible to not look at it.
Okay. Carrie?
So Counselor Hinckley,
Yes.
Counselor Ricky,
No.
Counselor Palmer,
No, and due to that is there's already a fence around it. I don't know if you're aware of that. I think signs would be more appropriate saying hazard, danger on the fence that we already have. So no on the fence.
okay, Counselor Gina,
I'm a no as well.
okay, Mr. Holmes,
Is that me? Yeah, I can't hear. No.
okay. And Ms. Holmes,
No.
and Mr. Work,
No.
okay,
My reason for no. Why do you keep
Nothing. Go ahead.
knock it off? My reason for no is we've been dealing with this forever. We've been here 45 years. It's a problem. Always has been. Short of putting C4 on it and blowing it down or anything else. It is, it's going to keep happening. I walk by it every day, every single morning early. Sometimes the other day, I was going to make some comments to some kids, and when I looked over the top, they were down there tagging. There were 8 kids, and basically I didn't want to get 8 fingers. It's a tough ball game. Something severe has to be done sooner or later, but I don't have the answers to it, and none of us ever have. That's not saying give up on it. Sooner or later, it's got to be taken down. It's not going to become a restaurant like people always thought or anything else. The place is shot, and we need to get rid of it one way or another, but I don't have the answers, and I certainly don't have the money. So that's my reason for no, Danielle. I think it wouldn't even be a Band-Aid. These kids don't care. And not
No,
just kids.
I understand. I do.
Yeah.
Jerry, can you look into how much C4 would cost?
I'll have to
Oh,
defer to
God.
Counselor Palmer for that.
And he might know how to do it.
And again, Danielle, I would echo what Larry just said. That's kind of my reasoning for voting no. I just don't, Yeah, I think that the only thing short of removing the building at some point is the only way, in trying to restore the natural riparian area is the only way you're going to eventually sort of solve this issue. And that's going to take a lot of money.
I understand. Of all things, first and foremost, my concern is always liability to the city. And so if nothing else, I would encourage Jerry to look into our sign budget and see whether or not some warning signs can be put up there, because that is my main concern, is liability to the city.
Got it.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
Try again.
All right, gang. I think we can adjourn then. Thank you.
All right, thank you.